hesitant to let you all know exactly what I'm thinking down the road in terms of preaching, because through the years I have discovered that I often change my mind. What I'm doing right now to help you if today's sermon and text feels a bit random is, for the summer months, I have decided as of today, and I've done it the past 2 weeks, no guarantees for next Sunday, but I'm simply picking Old Testament texts that have spoken to me through the years and preaching those as a sort of summer sermon series. So we have spent 2 weeks in Daniel. Now we are going to read just one verse from Leviticus. If you will, turn with me to Leviticus. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, from the Pentateuch, from the Law. Leviticus chapter 23, we shall read together verse 22. I can't remember the last time I preached a sermon based on just one verse, but here it is. The Lord is speaking to Moses, and he says to Moses, "When you reap the harvest of your land, moreover, you shall not reap to the very corners of your field, nor gather the gleaning of your harvest. You are to leave them for the needy and the alien. I am the Lord your God." This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God, and shall we pray. Oh God, we gather and we bless you. We gather and we praise and we thank you. It matters not whether our personal circumstances are to our favor or to our pleasing. It matters not what the condition of our health is. It matters not what our financial struggles may be. It matters not what burdens we may carry and bring with us today. We gather and we give you thanks and we give you praise for the gift of your Son, Jesus the Christ, for life and for eternal life. Oh God, you are worthy, and you alone are worthy to receive our worship this day. And on this day, we do give you thanks for the fathers and the father figures in our lives. And we ask that you might speak to us about our care for your church, about our care for the poor, about our care for the alien. And it is in the name of Jesus, oh God, that we submit this prayer unto you now. Amen. I am happy to say, I am proud to say, I am tickled pink to proclaim that yesterday Luann and I celebrated 27 years of marriage. Now I know you are looking at me and you are saying Paul. You used to say Trey, but now you're saying Paul. There is no way possible you have been married for 27 years. And I know you look at Luann and you say the same thing. However, the math adds up. It is true, 27 years of marriage. Since day one, June the 19th, 1994, since day one, Luann and I have been tithers. We were both tithers before we married, and so after we married, because this was already important to to us. This was already how we had decided to live our lives individually. Once we were married, there was just absolutely no fuss about the practice of tithing. Now, the idea of tithing is that you give of your income to the church. Usually, from Old Testament practices, you give at least a tenth of your income to the church. The word tithe means a tenth. And throughout our marriage, throughout our 27 years, this is what we have done. We have given at least a tenth of our income to the church. And here is what I personally love about tithing. Here is what tithing does for me personally. Tithing helps me to keep greed at bay. Tithing assists me in not becoming an overly greedy person. As Christians, we are concerned about supporting the work of the church. And because we know in our own households that bills come every month, electric bills, light bills, mortgage bills, water bills, etc., we know that that is how it works in our own households. And so, of course, that is how it works in the church. And as Christians, we need to support the work of the church. We need to support the work of the church because the church is the primary instrument through which God reveals the love of Jesus the Christ to men and women and to girls and boys. And we also, as Christians, we want to take care of the poor. We want to help take care of those who are less fortunate than we have been. There is a biblical mandate that those of us who have more, that we give and we protect those who have less. Jesus said that we would always have the poor with us, and indeed that is the case. So as Christian people, as followers of Jesus the Christ, we recognize that it is imperative to keep the church up and running so that we can share the love of Christ to all of the world. And we recognize, because Jesus taught about this a lot, that it is necessary that we care for the poor, for those who have been less fortunate than we are. So the question becomes then, at least it has in my own life, how do we know when we have too much in God's eyes? I mean, what should we do? Should we buy a new car or should we buy a used car? How do we know when we are becoming too extravagant in our own lives? Especially as time goes on, and especially as people get promotions, and especially as people make more money. As Christians, we want to guard against greed. We want to guard against taking too much for ourselves. We want to guard against becoming too extravagant. Here is my rule of thumb. I pass it on to you for whatever it is worth. Financial decisions must not interfere with tithing responsibilities. Financial decisions that I make, financial decisions that we make about how big of a house to buy, how new of a vehicle to purchase, etc., financial decisions must not interfere with tithing responsibilities. Now be aware of that, because when you go to the bank to borrow money for a house or a car or whatever it may be, odds are the banker is not going to say to you, now remember you've got to tithe. I haven't had that happen yet. So be aware of that. Our financial decisions must not interfere with our our tithing responsibilities. All of Leviticus takes place on Mount Sinai. The people have been either at the base of Mount Sinai, they have been at the Sinai region, and Moses has been up and down the mountain since Exodus 19. Remember that after their escape from slavery to the Egyptians, that the Israelites, that they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. In Exodus chapter 19, God makes a covenant. If the people will obey God's laws, then God will prosper them. In Exodus chapter 20, Moses goes up on Mount Sinai. He receives the Ten Commandments and he receives instructions. Instructions for the building of the tabernacle, which is the precursor to the temple. Instructions for the priest's clothing, what they are to wear, and how they are to dress. Now, once we get into the book of Leviticus, Leviticus is primarily, again, the Lord communicating through Moses, and Moses is to communicate the message to the people that this is how they are to live when they get into this land that has been promised to them by God. So Leviticus then contains instruction for the priest, and Leviticus contains instructions for sacrifice. And it is within this context that our verse for today occurs. Listen to it again in light of the importance of tithing, as we call it, in our Christian tradition. Leviticus 23:22. When you reap the harvest of your land, moreover. When you reap the harvest of your land, moreover, you shall not reap to the very corners of your field, nor gather the gleaning of your harvest. You are to leave them for the needy, and you are to leave them for the alien. I am the Lord your God. Now, this is not the only time we find instructions such as this. Deuteronomy chapter 19 Leviticus 19 verses 9 and 10, we find a similar teaching. Now, when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very corners of your field, nor shall you gather the gleanings of your harvest, nor shall you glean your vineyard, nor shall you gather the falling fruit of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the needy and for the stranger. I am the Lord your God. And then we get it once again when we get to Deuteronomy chapter 24, beginning in verse 19. When you reap your harvest in your field, and you have forgotten a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be for the alien, for the orphan, and for the widow, in order that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. When you beat your olive tree, you shall not go over the boughs again. It shall be for the alien, for the orphan, and for the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, you shall not go over it again. It shall be for the alien, for the orphan, and for the widow. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, I am commanding you to do this very thing. Now, isn't that a beautiful picture? Doesn't that paint a beautiful picture in your mind's eye? God says to Moses, tell the people, this is a very agricultural society, when you are harvesting your fields, don't take everything. When you are harvesting your fields, do not take the produce that is on the very corners of the land. When you are harvesting your fields and you look back and you see that you have missed some grapes or some wheat or what have you, don't go back and get it for yourself. Leave it for the poor. Leave it for the alien. And what this does, it is perhaps a bit more of a preaching than you might think at first. What this does is it puts no extra burden on the landowner to go pay somebody else to pick up the leftovers. He doesn't have to pay someone to go back and do that. And then for the poor and the alien and the immigrant, it's not a handout. They have to do a little bit of work. They have to go through the fields themselves. They have to pick up the grapes. They have to get the wheat themselves. So it is a beautiful, beautiful system. And this is the idea of tithing, you see. Tithing is we don't take everything. Tithing is we don't take everything that we have for ourselves. We use our resources, no matter how small or how big or in between. We use our resources for the work of the Church of Jesus the Christ, and we use our resources for the assistance to the poor, to the alien, to the refugee, to the immigrant. Now, this is a bit, perhaps, of an untraditional understanding of tithing. I've often heard tithing explained this way, and I'm not saying that it's wrong. It's just that my study this week has broadened my horizons on what tithing is. Generally speaking, I mean, tithing does mean a tenth, but generally speaking, what tithing is. I've often heard it said that the first 10% goes to the church, and that anything you do over 10%, whether you give it to the church or you give it to another organization or you give it to the poor or whatever you do, then that is your offering. Have you heard that before? I've heard that through the years. But it seems to me that all of it is tithing. Or if you prefer, all of it is an offering. That all of it is dedicated to God and to God's service. I like what I read last week from John E. Hartley in a commentary on Leviticus. Listen to what Hartley says in relation to this text. He says, giving generously is not only to be directed heavenward, but also earthward, in order to fulfill the whole desire of God. Giving generously is not only to be directed heavenward, but also earthward, in order to fulfill the whole desire of God. I think that's right. It's all one whole. It's all one thing. I don't know that we need to segment it and demarcate it and compartmentalize it. Giving generously, you see, to the church for the work of the gospel. Giving generously, you see, to the assistance of the poor and the alien and the immigrant and the refugee. It fulfills the whole desire of God. You can't have one without the other. You can't have a tithing without an offering. An tithe, it is a wholesome approach to giving generously. Do you remember the account of Ruth and Boaz? Ruth was married to Naomi's son. Naomi was Ruth's mother-in-law. When Naomi's husband died, and then her son, Ruth's husband, died, Ruth went with Naomi back to Bethlehem. Two women in this world without a husband. Two women in this world without a father. Two women in this world without a man to provide protection was very, very dangerous. Remember how the story goes. Ruth ends up in Boaz's field. And what does Ruth do in Boaz's field? Well, Boaz had left the leftovers. As Christians, we don't want to take the leftovers. As Christians, we don't want to be greedy. As Christians, we don't want to take the harvest all the way to the edges of our fields. We want to leave something. That is the principle of tithing, you see. And Boaz was obedient to the commands. And so Ruth gleaned from Boaz's field. And Ruth gets food, grapes, wheat. I don't know that the text specifies what kind of food, but Ruth gets food. And she takes it back, and she shares it with Naomi. And listen, church, I don't know how many of us fall into this category. But for Ruth and for Naomi, the leftovers from Boaz's field, because Boaz didn't take everything, because Boaz left the corners and the edges of the field alone, that, you see, was salvation for two hungry women. Indeed, generous giving, tithing heavenward, tithing to God, tithing for the work of the church, tithing for the spreading of the gospel, tithing for the making of mature disciples, tithing so that Jesus' teachings can be put into practice and our world can be made a better place. But also tithing earthward to folks who are hungry, and folks who are without, and folks who, for whatever reasons, are less fortunate than we are, caring for the poor, you see. All of it together fulfills the whole desire of God.